Good day, everyone, and welcome to the One Open Door podcast. My name is David McKay. This is a place for conversations and talks about Zen awareness practice and how to live the teachings of the Buddha right here, right now, in this very world we live in. If you enjoy what you hear today, I'd encourage you to share it with people in your life who might be interested and might also benefit from the teachings of the Buddha. And if you're someone who would like to have support for your own practice, there's lots of things that we do within the Sangha that I facilitate. I'd encourage you to go to www.theoneopendoor to see what we've got available. We do meditations in the morning. We have groups every week, virtual groups Thursday and Sunday evenings, classes, workshops, and other sorts of things. So if you'd like to participate, just let me know. Feel free to email me at djmckay429@gmail.com. And I'll get you the information you need so you can participate. Thanks again for being here, and I hope you enjoy the experience. So I'm very pleased today to have a guest on the show. I'd like to introduce my friend Shana. Shana is a friend of mine and also someone who participates within the Sangha. And Shana is here today to help us talk about a particular topic. Hey, Shana.
Hi, David.
Welcome. I'm glad you could be here. Yeah, it's going good.
Thank you.
So Shana is going to help us talk about, we thought where we'd start is to talk about compassionate self-discipline. That's something Shana's been working on, and we'll just kind of see where it goes from there. So Shana, do you have a place for us to start?
Well, to be honest, so compassionate self-discipline is just like my absolute, it's what I've taken the most from spiritual practice and implemented into my life. It's just my favorite. It's been it's something that I work on. It's something that the Sangha and spiritual practice has taught me, and I just love it so much. So I guess we can start where the opposite of compassionate self-discipline, which is like where I think most people actually know, myself, is where I was prior to compassion.
I think you're right about that, actually, Shane. I think that is where most people start off. Most people start off in some kind of conditioned idea about self-discipline and how to go about, accomplishing what we want to accomplish. Yeah, you're not alone in that at all, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I think most people, if I had to guess, it would be like something from childhood where we were taught like to do things for a reward, or we were taught to do things so that we don't upset people. And then as we grow up, the voice inside of our head is like, oh, you have to do this, or you're bad, or you better do this so that you can have a good thing.
So the self-discipline, in that case, what you're saying is the self-discipline, it's essentially we're trying to really control ourselves so that we meet maybe the expectations of the people we live with, our parents and other caregivers.
Yeah, and I think that you learn, it's almost like out of self-hatred, I think, if that may be too broad of a statement, but I think before, like now that I understand, which I would love for you to just to put that into a definition for me if you can. So what would you say compassionate self-discipline, like what does that mean for you?
What does it mean for you? Tell us your experience. Kind of tangibly speaking, like what did that look like for you to have a conditioned form of self-discipline? And then what do you see about that? What's changed about your understanding of that?
So the way that I used to do things, and which I often still find myself doing, it's just that I know how to get out of it now.
Okay.
At some point it was the things that I would do, for example, if it was work related or going to the gym or taking care of myself in some way, I did it because I would be like super mad at myself if I didn't, or there would be a conversation in my head of like, ugh, like you're no good at this. Like it's almost like I would hate myself into doing something, like you better do this or else, it was very, it was like a very negative way to do things.
Right. Yeah. Don't forget where you're going, Shana, but let me clarify that, because you mentioned that earlier. You talked about self-hatred. So self-hatred is something we talk about regularly in practice. It's a way of talking about the aspect of conditioned mind that causes us to be self-conscious. Conditioned mind is built on this idea that there's something wrong with us. And everybody's got that. Everybody, at least to the extent they're in conditioned mind, has got that. Everybody's got an idea there's something wrong with them. They're not the person that they should be in some way. And that idea is sort of the foundation that all of conditioned mind stands on top of. Because if we can be made to believe that there's something wrong with us, or we're not okay, or something like that, which we all were as children, then we can be made to be self-conscious instead of being aware. And that belief that there's something wrong with me leads to what is perceived to be the need to go to conditioned mind, to this system that we are all taught to be trapped inside of, that this survival system. It teaches us to go to conditioned mind in order to figure out what to do about the supposed fact that there's something wrong with us. And then conditioned mind gives us all kinds of, standards to meet and expectations to meet. And so, by and large, that's the lives of most people, unfortunately, is attempting to meet the standards and expectations that conditioned mind, the self-hating part of conditioned mind, is laying in front of them, with the idea that if I can just meet those standards, then I can be the person that I should be. And of course, that never actually happens. It's not possible to meet those standards because they keep on shifting and changing. So that's what you're talking about, right? So you were taught to believe that you had to be a certain way, to do certain things in order to be okay. And that's the self-hating part of the process you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it starts out like with our parents, but then it becomes society. And then it's just a long cycle of constantly trying to, it's almost like we're always being told, that we're not enough, that we're not good enough, and so then the motivation to do things is the idea of, I'm not good enough, so I have to do this, or if I don't do this, I'm not good enough.
Right. So how did that manifest particularly for you? Like, what were some of the standards and expectations that you tried to meet in that kind of false sort of self-discipline?
So for me, like, I had a very, I had a way of looking at things where, like, I had a mom who was very passive aggressive about things. So she wouldn't ever like tell me things. For example, like, it was never like, she was never outright and would tell me that I did something wrong. But when I would do things that weren't up to standard, the way she treated me changed.
Okay.
And I remember always wanting to just be perfect so that, like, mom wouldn't be weird or whatever it was for me as a kid. Like,
when she was weird, was it some form of, like, did she withhold attention, or did she withhold love or something like that?
Yeah, it was definitely, now looking back, I understand that it was withholding love. And I don't, blame her for any of this. So she didn't do this on purpose. She didn't. I understand
it was what was done to her, and she's just doing what was done to her.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, like, I grew up always knowing in the back of my head that, like, I just replaced my mom in different scenarios, like boyfriends or family or friends, or but now I do it with myself. Like, Shayna, if you're not perfect, I'm going to, like, essentially withhold love for myself.
Okay. So, don't forget where you're going. Okay. This is great. So let me just back it up and just kind of flesh that out a little bit. So you were taught that in order to get her love, you had to be a certain way. And she had some ideas about that, evidently, and they may not have been actually overtly stated, but it was probably clear that, you're supposed to be a certain way. Like, a lot of kids, you can't be needy, you got to follow the rules. You basically can't demand my time and attention in a way that I don't want, stuff like that. And so you had to be a certain way in order to get the love that you wanted and needed, because of course we all need that. And that, I love this, because that's what happened to all of us, of course, in one form or another. When we talk about conditioning or conditioned mind, that's what we're talking about. The condition is, I have to be something unnatural. This thing, I have to be this made up thing that is expected of me, or else I will not get the love and the attention that I need, and other things that I might need to survive. So that's kind of that's sort of like the mechanism that causes conditioned mind to happen.
Yeah, and the way you say conditioned mind, I think other people use that term, but they just have a different word for it. But like, I think that was when we learned that like our self isn't good enough. So this mechanism kicked in, which
Yeah.
conditioned mind was
Right.
like, all right, let's keep you safe.
Right. And then you become, see if this sounds familiar. See if this is what happened to you.
Yeah.
This is what typically happens. So what we learn is when we're kids is who I am and what I am is not okay. Because when I'm just being myself, then I don't get my needs met. I'm not loved. Correct. Because our parents or whoever our caregivers are, and also society, as you were saying earlier, there's the expectations for us are completely artificial. It's what they need from us that they want. They don't want for us to be ourselves. They want for us to be what suits them in their own conditioning. And so we have to learn how to be somebody who's not who we really are. And so, in practice all the time, as we're talking about the trouble that we're all in is that we are identified with a self that is separate from life. This artificial construct that we believe in as me. And when we believe that and we are trying to live as that separate me, then that's when we suffer. That's when our lives don't work. And so this is the process by which that happens, right? So you learn, okay, I can't be myself because then she's going to start acting weird, which means she's not going to give me the love that I need. And so I need to act in this way that she wants me to. And so we form an identity. That's just another way of saying a self. We form an identity and like, this is the person who I'm supposed to be. And then we have to work really hard to be that person, like this false person that meets the standards of our parents and caregivers instead of being the person who we actually are.
Yeah. And then unfortunately, like you become this identity and everyone around you, they only know that identity,
Right.
and they expect that from you because you show this to them for so long and they're like, oh, okay, so I know Shayna as this person.
Right.
When in reality, this person is just a bunch of habits that I created to please my childhood caregiver.
Oh, wow. Well said, Shayna. Well said. A bunch of habits that you've created to please your childhood caregivers. That's it. That's perfect. Yeah. And then within that, there's all kinds of strange things that happens. Like, so I'm going to make a total guess here. And if this is not what happened, tell me this isn't what happened. Okay. But I would bet, that. So you learned to, you basically had a relationship where you didn't get the love that you wanted unless you can meet certain standards. So I'm betting you've done that. And you kind of said this before, like in intimate relationships or friend relationships or work relationships, have you found yourself sort of seeking out other people who are withhold love?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I learned a word, it's called emotionally unavailable. I learned it as an adult.
Yeah.
And I was always chasing men who were like this, or even looking back, friendships as well, like even non-intimate situations. I was always looking, for friends I was always finding those people who I had to work really hard to convince them to love me.
Yeah, just like you did with your mom.
With my mom, which is weird because I never noticed it. I never realized that's what I was doing. I didn't.
No, isn't that crazy? Yeah, and the reason is because we're inside the identity. And inside the identity, we're identified with the identity. So inside the identity, this all just seems completely true and real. And we're not aware at all of the process we're doing. So it seems like airtight. There's nothing outside of this. But what's happened for you over time is you've learned to get outside of that identity, right? And you can see it from the outside. And now you can see like, wow, that doesn't make any sense. But from inside of it, it seems completely true and real.
Correct. But looking at it from the outside now, it just looks so, but when you're in it, absolutely. It is true to you when you're in it. When I'm in that like feeling of, I need to work really hard to show people that I love, that to prove to people to love me, that they should love me. It's like nothing else seems real, but this moment.
Right. And then there's stuff underneath it that's unconscious, like you're saying, that you and all of us, everybody's doing this
Mhm.
process you're talking about in one form or another. We're all driven by these unconscious things that we're not aware of. So in this case, the one I'm kind of playing around with in my mind as we're talking is the need to not be loved. So
Wow.
that's a need, right? I need to not be loved. I need for people to
Wow.
withhold love from me because that's
Yeah.
how I remain this identity that I learned to be. If somebody comes along, and
Wow.
I bet this happened, I would be curious to know if this happened, that, have you ever had a man or really, anybody come and really offer you, love? And have you ever been in a situation like that and kind of found yourself sort of rejecting it or avoiding it or trying to
Wow.
sabotage it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we do because, for a person who's in conditioned mind, and that is all of us to whatever extent we have not done spiritual work, everybody's in
Mhm.
conditioned mind. So
Mhm.
someone who is in conditioned mind, their number one priority in life, and this is a radical statement, but it feels like it's true. Their number one priority in life above anything, way, way, way above anything like peace and joy and happiness and well-being and connection and belonging and, all these heart-centered things that we really want. Way, way above that is the need to maintain identity.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
so that to me, that explains why that phenomenon would happen. So, you have an identity that says, I am not loved for who I am. And so I need to make sure that I'm never loved for who I am. So somebody comes along, some guy or, whoever really comes along and says, I'll love you for who you are. And you'd be like, well, you don't really know me.
Mhm.
That's the classic one. If you really knew me, then you wouldn't.
Mhm.
Or, something like that to just sabotage it and keep it at a distance, because true love is going to blow up that identity. That identity will not be able to
Mhm.
stand in the face of real love and acceptance, because it is made out of conditional love, which is the opposite of love, really, and non-acceptance. And so we just can't tolerate that kind of stuff when we're in conditioning.
I mean, you said that. So yes, that's exactly. Yeah. I rejected anyone who would love me for me. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I would send them far away. I would do something to sabotage the
Mm-hmm.
relationship
Mm-hmm.
in some
Mm-hmm.
way.
Can you remember an example? And if you can't, that's okay. But it'd be interesting to have an
I
example.
mean, to be honest, even like the man that I'm with right now, like my boyfriend right now, I met him like 3 years ago as an adult.
Uh-huh.
And it was the very start of this work for me. And
Okay.
he's a fairly healthy person. He was very like unconditionally supportive and loving of me. And I
Mm-hmm.
just remember always saying to him like, no, like it's just not going to work. Like we just can't make it work. Like I'm
Yeah,
just a
this
bad person.
unconditional
And
love and support
yeah.
thing, this is not going to work for me.
And I would say that, I would say like I will sabotage this at some point. Like this isn't. I'm not good at this stuff.
You
And
actually knew that in yourself, or you thought that in
I
yourself, that you.
knew,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know why I did it, but I knew that like every relationship, friendship, even like anything I had in my life, I always somehow found a way to like, yeah, it was always very chaotic for me. My life was always
Mm-hmm.
ran on chaos. And so, yeah, I would
Mm-hmm.
find ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I had like small pieces of self-awareness. And so I knew I would say that to potential partners. I would be like, listen, it was like a warning sign.
Just
Like
so you know, I'm going to reject you at some point. We can have a nice time
I
between
will,
now and then, but I'm gonna blow
but
this thing up.
and then you're going to feel bad because you're going to think it was you.
Right. Is that what you did? Did you blame it on them?
Yeah, I would somehow I had this effect on, like, it was because I probably learned, I don't know, there was like probably a part of my ego who was like, hey, if it was never about me, it was always about them. I always thought it was
Right.
them,
Right, right.
but
So when
really
you look at this now, Shana, from the point of awareness that you have, because you've gained a lot of awareness, in
yeah.
these last 3 years, what do you see as what's actually going on there? Like, why would you want to blow these relationships up that potentially could work?
So like what you were saying, like I had to not have love. And what I've learned, David, is that I had to not have love because I didn't love me.
Right. Say more
And
about
I
that,
think
Shana.
there's,
That's really important.
yeah, there's a baseline where I think that like I think about it now sometimes, like how can, first of all, how can anybody love you, you know, if you don't even love you, like you're like,
Mm-hmm.
you should love yourself the most. But
Mm-hmm.
I also think, how can you love anyone else if you don't, if you don't even know how to love yourself? Like how can you, you know, I laugh because my dad dated this woman years ago. And my dad, he smoked cigarettes. And this woman didn't want to date him because she said, look at the way you treat your body like you smoke cigarettes. You must not love yourself.
Mm.
And I remember when my dad told me this many years ago, I didn't understand that. But now I see that in other people who like claim to love me or something, right? In my
Mm-hmm.
head, it's kind of like, but I just like, do you love yourself? And so now that I have learned how to love myself, like in this, not this, you know, it's not an all the time 24/7. I love
Mm-hmm.
myself. It's a work
Mm-hmm.
in progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but now that I've learned to do it, I think that like now I know how to love others a little bit
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
because the
how to
process is the
accept
same, right?
love.
The process there
Yeah.
in some ways, I think we could say, no, there is no self and other. You know, that there's a line in the daily recollection that we say every morning at the beginning of meditation, you know, that there is no self and other as the awareness of pure undisturbed consciousness slips into all consciousness. So there is no self and other, you know. And so, and there's a way in which that's true, right? Because the processes we do internally are exactly the same as the ones we do externally.
Mm-hmm.
There's no difference. And so I think you're making a great point. Yeah, if you can't love yourself, then you can't love another because you can't love, you know, and it doesn't even
Yeah.
really matter what the
Period.
object is.
Mm-mm.
In some sense, if you are love, then there is no object almost. You're just
Yeah.
love. But if,
So,
you know, if there is a block there, and we're talking about this conditioned block that everyone who's in conditioned mind has, that
mm-hmm.
says, you know, I don't deserve to be loved because I am not the person I should be. You know, I haven't met the standards and expectations that are required for me to be able to deserve love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to keep that at a distance. And then in that state, we are separate from love. We're separate from the love that we are. I would say that what we are is love. It's one word to use anyway to describe who we are and what we are in our essence. And if we don't have that because of this block, and the block are basically just things we're taught to believe that are not true, you know, a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a block there and we haven't gotten past the block, then we're separate from who we really are, which is that love. And as you're saying, we can't experience that anywhere.
Yeah. It's I absolutely. I think the way you're saying that too is like there's a block, like there's something like stopping us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
having that,
Yeah.
something that is like so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And so, Shana, when you say that you have been working on learning to love yourself over time, and you had good success with that. What's that mean for you? Like how have you gone about trying to learn how to love yourself this past while?
That's a great question, David. So it definitely started for me with, I think the way that I used to and still occasionally will pop up. I used to tell myself that I would love myself when blank.
Aha. Okay. So it was conditional.
So
When you meet,
yes, conditional. Yes,
just like you were
yes,
taught from your mom and other places, I'm sure when you were a kid,
yes,
if you meet the conditions, you get the love.
yes. So if I lose 20 pounds, then I can love my body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I am, you know, this way, then I can, if I spend this many hours working this week, then I will love myself. You know, I'll
Uh-huh.
consider loving you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. And what was the result? I know you're headed somewhere with that, but this is
yeah,
just to
no.
flesh that out. What was the result of doing that process? How did you actually feel about yourself?
So the result of that was overwhelm. Like I would I would stay in this cycle, very much just like the cycle of the people around me. Like I would tell myself, okay, Shayna, you know, maybe not quite literally say this to myself, but like inside of my head, there would be some form of, okay, like if you lose, let's say 20 pounds this month, which is not realistic, I will love you. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I would try and reach that expectation. And it wouldn't happen because that's not
Right.
realistic.
Right.
And then I would hate myself because I
Right.
didn't deserve the love, because
Yeah.
I didn't reach the goal.
Yeah. Boy, that is so classic, isn't it? I would bet that everyone listening to this can relate to that. Uh, they
Totally.
might not do it with like weight, but they'll
Sure,
do it
sure.
with something.
Anything.
And a lot of people are doing it with that, in body image and stuff, but it's not really that, right? It's a universal process. So what you're saying
Yeah.
basically is you internalized the dynamic that happened between you and your mom, and also probably between you and your dad and you and your culture and society and everything, where you have, like we've been saying, you have to meet certain conditions in order to feel loved, and then fail at that, so that
Okay.
then you could feel bad about yourself and then maintain this self-consciousness that
Hmm.
that a conditioned self builds itself around, right? That's what we
Yeah,
do. Like,
absolutely.
that's exactly how it works. And so you internalize that. It's almost like your mom and others taught you how to do that, and then you
Hmm.
internalize, and after a while you didn't need them anymore, because you could just do it all on your own. You could set your own standards and expectations and then fail at it. And we have to fail at it if we're going to maintain conditioning. So then we fail at it, sabotage it, or, as you say, set unrealistic expectations that cannot possibly be met, so
Hmm.
that we'll fail. So that we get to, and it really is kind of a get to, so we get to feel bad about ourselves, beat ourselves up, tell ourselves that we're not the person we should be, and all this stuff,
Hmm.
because then we're safely ensconced within a self that is separate from life, and
Hmm.
we're in our survival system.
Absolutely. Which it's crazy because I wish I would have known this as a little kid, but like, yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
internalized that. That is what
Mm-hmm.
I did. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what keeps me in this, or kept me in this cycle of, yeah, you're not good enough. Let's try harder. Let's fail. Let's try
Mm-hmm.
harder. Let's fail.
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
if you ever do succeed, it's almost like your body can't handle that. Like, whoa, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Your conditioning can't. Yeah, because
yes,
if it's
yes,
the
yeah.
success is just like the love we are talking about. If you allow yourself to succeed, then you can't maintain your identity anymore, because
Hmm.
your identity is built on the failure. And so you have to
Hmm.
make sure that success doesn't happen too, just like you have to make sure the love doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I just say the word, I just use like weight as an example, but like that's just like because that's something that like I think is relatable and easy to like
Right, right.
tangible to just like talk about. But it's anything. I mean, there's moments where I would be like, okay, Shayna, like if you're not crazy this whole week, like, and I say that as in like, just like if you don't overthink, or
Uh-huh.
if if you're nice to your boyfriend all week, or if if you work this much, like if you work this many hours this week, then all right, then I'll love you.
Right,
And
right. But then it
those
never
things
actually
never happen.
happened, right? Because you
Right,
never
they
actually.
never happen.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's really helpful. So we were headed down, you were talking about the self-love. So what has changed for you in that, and how have you worked with that over time?
So I flipped it. Instead of um, I like became aware. First of all, the first thing that happened was I became aware that I had these thoughts in my head. I didn't even know that I had these thoughts because they were what was driving me to do what I was doing, and it was kind
Right.
of like just there,
Right.
like subtly
Right.
happening.
So
Um,
just to flesh that out a little bit. So I think we talked about this a little
yeah,
bit in the last podcast I did with a guest, with Janet, recently, about the
yeah,
so the everything that we've been talking about so far in the show, these processes, these unconscious processes that are going on, they are being created and maintained by our thoughts. It's basically, here's another way of saying it, is it's conditioned mind is talking us into believing this stuff all the time. And it has to talk us into it all the time, because it's not real. It's not real. It's not true. It's not here. It doesn't exist. And so it has to constantly create an illusion. Um, so you're in your case, conditioned mind is talking to you about, how you're not the person you should be, or something like that, I suppose.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
as it's talking you into it, you believe it, and that
mm-hmm.
creates this whole sort of situation where you have to attempt to meet these standards and fail.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like we said before, that's the identity that you create for yourself, and that's what you believe, and that's what you
Mm-hmm.
manifest,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like into your real life. That's what you are. You are. And for me, that looked like a series of people pleasing and codependency. It looked like
Okay.
I always wanted to please everybody just to make sure that everyone liked me, and like I wanted to be liked. But yes, so I sorry, not to go off. So to answer your question, so I eventually became aware of my thoughts, and I remember like I'm going to take the gym for example. When I would tell myself like, all right, Shayna, we're going to go to the gym every day this week, and then I'll love you.
Okay.
It was like, hey, Shayna, I love you today. I love you already. I already love you. I love the way you look right now. We're going to go to the gym because I want to help you feel better.
So you moved it out of a conditional thing, which is you have to go to the gym every week and then you'll get loved. You took a condition out of it, it sounds like. And you just said, no, I love you right now. And whether you go to the gym or not, I'm right here and I love you.
Yes.
And I loved what you said too. And I want to take you to the gym because it's a good thing for you. It will help you to feel better. Let's do it for that reason instead of in order to prove to ourselves that we're okay and then fail at that.
Yes. And I don't know, David, if you remember, there was something that you had said to me that I told you I really liked. And it was the idea that like, if I love myself so much, why am I going to go to the gym and try to change myself?
Right.
If I love my body right now and today, why would I change it? Right. I don't know if do you remember what you had said to me?
I don't. Why don't you tell me?
Okay. So it was, I wanted I don't want to butcher it, but here's my best. You said, I love you right now, like so much, but I love you so much and I will help you get to wherever it is that you want to be.
Yeah. I love that. That actually comes from my teacher. That really? Her language for it was, I love you exactly the way you are and I'll help you be any way you want to be.
There you go. Yes.
So beautiful, isn't it? Because it's not an either or. And a lot of people fall into that, the trap of that idea that says that, well, if I love myself unconditionally, then I'm never going to be motivated to do good things or to make some kind of a change. You know, I need to dislike myself in order to create change. And that is not the case at all. You know, someone that's in a self-hating process, like you were describing earlier, the function of that process is to maintain everything exactly as it is, even while the person in their mind is thinking, I'm trying to change something. But if they're doing a self-hating process, it will remain exactly the same because that's what that process does. And ironically, the reverse is true. Like if somebody accepts themselves unconditionally, exactly where they are, then there's the power to change because they're not holding on to some idea of who they are, some negative idea. If you're not attached to some negative idea of who you are, which is what happens when we're in that self-hating process, then there's no reason why you can't just let yourself be whoever you want to be.
Absolutely. Almost like the idea of resistance, right? Like if you put resistance in front of something, like, oh wow, I mean, now that I think about it like this, like it's almost like you have to work harder at it because there's resistance, but like it's just going to keep you working harder at that thing you don't want.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And deny, as we've been saying, and denying the success to make sure that you do that perpetually. Yeah. I mean, that is as good. That's like, you know, cotton candy and ice cream for a conditioned mind. You know, it's like, let's get somebody in a situation where they're trying to fix themselves in a way that's impossible.
Yeah.
You know, and that can go on forever. You know, and I don't know if you know people in your life, but I certainly do who are doing that process and have been doing that process for decades and very likely will be doing that process till they die, of trying to be the person they should be and making sure that never happens. And so they can feel bad about themselves and go through life that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I mean, many people in my life and people that I talk to and myself at times. I mean, there's still times, you know, where I notice myself doing something that's really just enabling the thing I don't want.
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you about this. Now, this is a little tricky. Okay. So let's see where it goes. But, you know, so you've got this, this conditioned idea that says your body's not the way it should be. And, you know, you need your body to be different. In this case, you need to lose some weight in order to love your body. And then you
Uh-huh.
said, well, and so you're going to go to the gym to do that, and then if you're
Uh-huh.
following the condition process, you're going to fail at that and then beat yourself up. But we're talking about
Mhm.
doing a conscious process now. And you said that you're going to go to the gym because it makes you feel good and because it's healthy, and that's
Mhm.
great. But I wonder also, can you go to the gym in order to lose weight and look in the way that you want to look, but it not coming from a self-hating conditioned place? You think that's possible?
Wow. Yeah, I think it is possible. I do. I know it's possible. I think it is. And I think I'm actually sort of on that, like on the route to that now, because
Uh-huh.
um, for the first time in my life, like I've always been someone who liked to go to the gym and like to eat really healthy. I did it for the wrong reasons, but
Right.
I
Did it for
always
the
did
wrong
that.
reasons. That's what we do. Yeah, but
Yeah,
but it's always been there.
it's been there. Yeah, and I think probably again, it's probably childhood. I'm sure, my mom was very about like the way people looked and stuff. And so I think I probably internalized that
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. But
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, so right now my post like staying home from like, post okay, so during this last year, my gym was closed for a long time and I probably made excuses for why I can't go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm starting to go back in the gym with a new mindset of, I love myself, but I'm gonna go to the gym. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where it's headed, where you said, like, it's sort of like I love myself right now. I do, but like I know how good I feel
Uh-huh.
when I'm feeling like my absolute best.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I don't not
And
love
when you look
myself.
good too.
Yeah, it just feels good. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it
feel
feels
better.
good,
I feel
doesn't it?
better.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I want to give myself that gift. Like, I love you so
Right.
much, Shayna. I am going to give you that gift of feeling good about yourself. Even though I already do, I do feel good about myself. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like a new level of like confidence and, not confidence, because it's not like once I have that, I already
Right.
feel those things.
You're not
I
dependent on
do.
that. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like an extra that comes along, which is cool.
Right. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Part of the reason I wanted to kind of poke at that a little bit is because there's this is a little bit of a kind of a side point, but um, I know people really struggle with this conditioning that says that, um, like if I want to look a certain way, or it could also be something, if I want to be successful in a certain way, I want to accomplish a certain thing. Well, that's egotistical, and if I'm really doing
Mm,
practice, then I'm not going to care about stuff like that. And there's a
yeah.
way in which
Yeah.
that's so, and you were just kind of articulating it, I think. If we're attached to it and dependent on it, then that's no good. Like I need to
Yeah.
look a certain way, like I need to be at a certain weight, or I need to be, pretty or handsome in a certain kind of way, and then I can feel good about myself. I mean, that's the same thing we've been talking about for the whole thing. Same condition, ugly, self-hating process is going to end up in suffering and unhappiness. So that's no good.
Mhm.
To be attached and dependent on a certain thing, and in anything, we don't want to be attached and dependent on any outward thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we're not attached and dependent, we get to have what we want. There's nothing, to me, there's nothing in practice that says we don't get to have what we want. Uh, we don't get to have what ego wants, which is just another way of saying what I just said. Ego wants to be attached to things, and then end up use those
Great.
things in order to feel bad about itself. So that's
Yeah.
no good. But if we're not in the ego place, there's nothing that says that we can't have what we want, and we can enjoy something, even something like, boy, I look great in this outfit, or boy, I'm
Yeah.
I'm hot, even, or
Yeah.
whatever, something like that. There's nothing wrong with that,
No.
as long as that's being held in a place of unconditional love, and our sense of self-worth and value and stuff is not dependent on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's funny that you say that is I used to have such judgment, around people who like felt good in their bodies and like felt hot or sexy. And now I can look at women who are so empowered by the way they look. I
Mm-hmm.
love it. I'm like, wow, good for you. That is
Mm-hmm.
amazing. You should
Mm-hmm.
feel that way. That is
Mm-hmm.
great. And because I changed the way that I look at it within myself, the way that I look at it in others is different now. Like
Right, right,
um
yeah. And then of course the
and
beautiful thing happens in that is, um, I'm thinking of this thing. One time I was talking to my teacher, uh, And we were on retreat, and I don't remember how it came up, but I was like, I feel like I'm getting better looking every day. you know, and we
She was
both
like,
laughed
"You're not."
because, right, exactly, because
I'm
that
kidding. No.
actually was not happening. but in my but in my head it was, because I would look in the mirror. We were on retreat, and the monastery, there weren't many mirrors around, so it was hard to do this. But we're on retreat, staying in this other place, and there were mirrors around. I was, so I was looking in the mirror, and the love that was growing in my heart for myself caused me to see myself in a completely different way, and I saw a
That's so
beauty
beautiful.
there, that really moved me. And that's what I meant when I said that. From an outside kind of perspective, somebody's looking at me, is he getting better looking every day? No, it's actually heading the opposite direction.
No.
But in my heart, I could see,
Hmm.
I could see myself, I could see my beauty, and I feel like that's
Absolutely.
that's the place that transcends this whole issue, this whole body image kind of issue that people struggle with so much in our culture, and especially women.
Yeah. I agree. Is just the idea of, yeah, and even David, I mean, you could take it to a sense of like, even on another level, like even the way that I look at my professional life, it used to be, okay, if I write every single day, if I go out every single night, then I'm successful in my career.
Yeah,
And if
Shana
I,
is for
work
anybody
on,
who, I hope it's okay that I say this, Shana, but for anybody, so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Shane is a comedian. She's very funny,
Yes.
and she writes
Thank you.
comedy all the time. She goes and performs just about every night.
Thank you, David. Yeah, but so yes, so in the stand-up world, I thought to myself like, okay, like I have to go to every single open mic. I need to write as much as I can, and then maybe I'll love myself and I'll consider myself successful this week because I did this many.
Mm-hmm.
And even the way that I look at that, that's changed. Like it's not about it's not about the amount. It's about, sometimes I want to take care of myself. Sometimes I want to rest. Sometimes I don't want to do this. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do
Mm-hmm.
go out and do every single one because I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely want to. But it's
Mm-hmm.
no longer because you must so that I view you as successful. Like the
Right.
pressure is off.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in terms of compassion and self-discipline, that's a big piece of it, right? It's
Yeah.
not just okay. Self-discipline from a centered place is not just I'm going to go out and successfully meet all these standards and conditions and
Right.
expectations that conditioned mind is putting on me that I inherited as a child. That's not, I think we've established, that's not compassion, self-discipline. That's a form of
Mm-hmm.
self-hatred.
Yeah.
Instead, what you're saying is you're learning how to choose what's really so, what you truly want. So not what
Mm-hmm.
your conditioned system wants or what ego wants, but what you truly want for yourself. And a part of self-discipline is being able to exercise that choice. So conditioned mind might say, "Oh, well, you're not doing it right, or you can't. We're not going to love you unless you're writing this much and doing this and accomplishing this." It's like, no. Part of the self-discipline is saying, "No, shut up and go away. I'm not listening to you.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose from my heart what is truly important to me." And
Yeah.
compassionate self-discipline is the practice of successfully giving to myself a beautiful life that I want to have from my heart.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting, David, two things come from that for me when you say come up for me when you say that is number one, when I started to like when the pressure was off and I was doing things because I wanted to, I was actually writing more because it used
Uh-huh.
to be like,
Yep.
oh, you have to.
Yeah.
Um,
And who wants that, right?
and
Who
it's
wants to be pushed into
no,
things all the
nobody.
time?
No,
Hmm.
no.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
love
the
that you
second
said
thing that
that.
comes up,
That's so universal in my experience. I hear other people saying that all the time. When they get out of the conditioned
absolutely.
shoulds and all the pressure to be the right person and prove themselves, and that they're worthy of love and all the stuff that we do in conditioned mind, when that stuff's gone, then they're actually way more efficient, for one thing, because they're not distracted all the time in their heads by these
Yeah,
thoughts about how they're unworthy and they're no good and they got to do this and they got to do that, and they're just freed up to just act spontaneously. And when
yeah,
we're freed up in that way, there's an enormous amount of energy that comes up inside our minds and our
absolutely.
bodies, and that energy seeks form. And so for you, like the
Yes,
form that different from me, because I'm not a comedian and I would be terrible at that. But so I'm not going to spend my day writing jokes, because that's just not the form
right.
it manifests in for me, but it does for
No,
you.
no.
And so that energy
Yeah,
wants to seek that form, and it'll do so naturally and spontaneously and with a lot of energy.
And yes, with energy, because, and I think like people, I think in society, there's a word right now that I've been hearing. It's this idea of burnout. And I think if you do anything, like if you work a 9-to-5 job, if you are a real estate agent or a lawyer, like I think that like if you are just going to meet this like unrealistic standard of success, you're going to burn yourself out, because you're not doing it from this centered place. You're doing it from, also, I think, David, for me, a lot of what it used to be was the validation from others as well as myself.
Right.
Right. I thought success looked like if I do this, then others will view me as successful. I mean, since high school.
And really, you're just projecting those same kind of standards and expectations onto those people, right? Yeah.
Right.
And seeking validation, and maybe you'll get it temporarily. Like if somebody says, "Oh, Shana, that was so awesome. You're so great because you did this, this, and this." And then for a couple minutes, if maybe it feels good, it's like, "Oh, I'm the person I should be. I've arrived." But then conditioned mind is back there undermining that. So yeah, well, but they didn't really see what you did. They don't really know you, or but that didn't really count, or you really have to accomplish this. And then it's just, there you are back on the wheel, looking for the next form of validation.
Absolutely. Like you're in this constant cycle of, and something, I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, David. I don't know if you mind me plugging a book. It's called The 4 Agreements.
Oh yeah, I know that book. Yeah, it's a great book.
Okay. So that was one of my first books that I ever read that kind of like put me on this journey. Do
you remember the author? I can't remember the author's name.
I don't know, but I honestly.
That's all right. People can look it up. Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good, it puts things like in a very like easy like way to. It's like a very easy. It's like no, I shouldn't say that. It's anyway, it's a book and it lays things out pretty. I'm gonna see if I find the author, I'll share.
Yeah, that's okay.
It lays things out pretty easily. Maybe the easy is not the right word, but it lays things out for you in a very simple way, I guess. But for me, it was simple. And one of the things it says is to never take things personally. And I completely understand not taking like bad things personally. Like if someone says something mean to you, I understand not taking that personally. But it says even if someone says something good to you, not taking it personally either.
Yep. Yeah, we talk a lot about that in practice too. Yeah, because
you say this as well. Yes.
There is no person. That's the thing about that. There's the person is the separate self. That's an illusion. To take things personally is to take things as a separate self. But if there is no separate self, there is no taking it personally, because there's no person to take it personally.
Yes. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. That's even another layer to it. Yeah. See, I will say that is the one thing that I struggle with the most as far as like practice. I do, as much as I understand the idea that I am not a separate self, I do to an extent. That for me is where it gets confusing. That is where I still try and figure that out for myself, because I get that, like I'm not a separate self. I understand that we are all connected and that ego is what really like makes us be like separate selves. But sometimes for some reason that is the hardest part for me too.
Yeah, it is for everybody, Shana. I mean, because that idea, I mean, you can kind of get it intellectually, but it doesn't really, to get that intellectually doesn't really do anything. We have to get it experientially. And when I say experientially, what I mean is we have to have the experience of being not a self, but being in a place where, we're not identified with a self, which you have all the time, right? But you can't, and everything you're saying, what you accomplish through practice comes from the space of being outside of that self and looking from a place of awareness instead of taking all of life personally and looking at it through the eyes of that person. So you have the experience of that all the time, but you can't really understand it in the way that we normally try to understand things. It's purely experiential. So it's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's tricky is a great way to say it, because it is. It's very it's like beyond us. It's beyond
Right.
our capacity to like
Right.
get from a self point, like from a
mean,
person point of view.
exactly, from a person point of view or an intellectual point of view, and yet we can have the experience, and we do all the time. When
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
doing anything else, you're just there, present with the sunshine or the leaves on the trees or the
Hmm.
bird song or
Hmm.
whatever it might be. You're just there with it. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
let
when
me.
I meditate, I feel
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
feeling of yes,
Hmm.
yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and then to relate it to what we're talking about, like that's the place from which the compassion and self-discipline happens. That's the place from which the love happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
The place that's outside of identity,
Yeah,
like that is not identified with a self, because the
yeah.
conditioned person does not have love. That person is living without love. As a matter of fact, that person, I would say that person, so we're talking about a conditioned identity here, that person's existence is the result of the love not being there. It's an attempt to survive a life in which that unconditional love is not there. So whenever we're in a self in conditioned mind, we are deprived of love, even though love
Mm-hmm.
is who, as I was saying earlier, is who we really are. Let go of being the self, just move to a place of pure awareness, and then magically, mysteriously, wonderfully, the love is there, and the compassion and the acceptance and everything that we're looking for, and that you've been talking about in terms of true centered compassionate self-discipline is there, and also the ability to sort of mentor the human through this life and help him or her or them to have a good life and to have what they want and what they need in this life and so on.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful. I didn't even realize that. You're right, David. Like when I have that compassionate self love, or when I do things for myself when I let go of the identity of being someone who needs validation or who needs approval or needs people to like them or can't have love, when I act in a way that's not those conditioned things, you're right. I'm acting from like a bigger place, a place
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yep.
connected, that's not
Right.
a self.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's where all the power is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me
So
ask you
even if I
before.
may not,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
yeah, even if I may not be able to articulate that, it's like it happens and I feel it. It's
Right.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and you can't articulate it really. I mean, you can sort of try, and if you're
no,
telling somebody who also has
no.
the experience, then it's easy to communicate. But if you're trying to tell somebody who doesn't have that experience, it's impossible because it's not an
Mm-mm.
intellectual thing; it's an
And you
experiential
kind of
thing.
sound, to someone who doesn't understand it, like probably, I mean, anyone who maybe listens to this and is not necessarily like a practices this regularly, probably it sounds a little bit almost crazy. Like, what does that even mean?
Mhm.
Um, because you can't explain it until you just experience it.
No, the other person has to have the experience, and then if they do, you
Mm-hmm.
you have to say almost nothing to convey it because both
Correct.
of you and both of you have been there. Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to just, if this, and see if this is okay with you. I would love to throw one more little piece in this conversation before we go, which is, how we're talking earlier about how there really is no self or other, or you could say there is no inside or outside. Ultimately, everything
Mm.
is, what we're doing, quote, on the inside is the same as what we're doing outside. I'm curious, with this practice of compassion, self-discipline you've been doing, how does that affect your relationships with others who say are doing things that you feel like are not good for them, or who are doing things I don't know, that don't work for you or something. So in other words, when you're interacting with someone who is doing things that are counterproductive in some way, and you want to try to influence their behavior, what does this practice you're doing, how does that inform you in skillful ways of doing that?
What a great question. Um, so for a long time, I always wanted to control other people.
Okay.
Um, I wanted to control other people's actions, perceptions of me. I wanted to just be very controlling. I don't know
Okay.
why, but that was just something.
Well, do you
And so,
what would the do you have an idea of what the conditioned motivation would be for that? Like, what would you get in yourself for controlling someone else?
hmm, so if I could control them, like I can control what they're doing, I would be able to like essentially like their validation. Like I would know how they felt about me or what they saw
Ah,
or
okay. All right.
I don't know. I'd have to
Mhm.
dig deeper into that. I'm
Mhm.
not sure where that came from, but
Mhm. It's probably some form of, we're talking about these conditions that we put on things so that we can feel the way we want to feel about ourselves. It's probably
mhm.
some form of that. If you can control them, then they're going to do the things that help you to be the person that you want to be and help you to avoid being the person you don't want to be. Or
Oh, interesting.
you get to be the person you want to be in relationship with them. So like, for example, like let's say they're doing something you don't like. You can kind of become your mom in relationship to them, because your mom has been internalized, right? And so that's a part of the
Right,
conditioned
right, right.
dynamic in there. If you can become your mom in terms of them and then, judge them for that and maybe withhold love, then
Yes.
you're reinforcing that whole dynamic that we were talking about earlier.
Oh, that's wild.
Does
Yes.
that ring true
Okay,
at
so
all?
that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes. So yes. So in the sense that I always wanted to control, and so when I started to do this whole self love, like when I started to like feel that way about myself, now when I see someone else doing something else, instead of getting like angry or wanting to control or change them,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, the first feeling that I feel for them is empathy.
Ah,
I
yes.
feel
Good.
I feel not in like a bad for them, but just in like a, oh
Uh-huh.
man, like I know where that's coming from, and
Right.
that's a crappy place to be. And
Right.
I
So you're
feel
not you're not pitying them. You're not
no,
looking down on them, but you're
right,
empathizing with them because you know that place in
yes,
yourself, right? You know what it's like to
yes,
act unconsciously and do unskillful things, and it's no
yes,
fun. And you can see that
yes,
that's what's going on with another person, and so you feel an empathy and a compassion for them in that state.
yeah, absolutely. Or when somebody, yeah, when they're doing anything, I can just kind of. So now, like I've learned, I don't want to, I don't want to control them. I don't want to change it. But I will say, like sometimes it's hard because it's like, man, like if only this person knew what's
Right.
on, like
Mm-hmm.
that they can fix it. But people who know me, who are close to me, like they know that I do this work. Not
Mm-hmm.
just because of, just things that I implement in my daily life or things that
Yeah,
I've
they can watch you
changed.
doing it probably.
And they
Mm-hmm.
can, yeah, some people have just adopted it or wanted to or asked questions about it based on just seeing me go through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to answer your question, I mean, that's it. Like I have empathy for them, and like I model the behaviors. Like I do what I do, and hopefully that they will want to change. But like if they don't, then that's okay. Like that's just their journey to be on, and I've learned to kind
Mm-hmm.
of let it go. Like it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter to me
Mm-hmm.
what other people do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So beautiful, isn't it? So relaxing too. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Oh my
And what
gosh,
has
it's
that done?
so
What has that done in your
freeing.
relationships? How's that impacted the relationships you've had?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing because it's just like even like in my like with my partner, like with my boyfriend, I've just all of them, like my friendships, I used to want to just, yeah, like control. You have to do what I want you to do, and if you don't, I'm not going to love you. With my friendships, like everything, and now it's kind of like I let them be whoever it is they want to be.
Mm,
I don't
that's
try and,
so good. You let them
yeah,
be who they want to be. You
who they
don't try
are,
to make
yeah.
them into being who you want them to be.
No, even though sometimes it's hard, I mean, like
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
especially like if I have like someone comes to me for advice or like, like like I just like someone who I care about, if somebody asks me, let's say, advice about like, I'm this or whatever like this problem is in their life, I
Mm-hmm.
know that self love is the cure to almost like anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy, but I
Mm-hmm.
really feel that
It
self
is a
love
true
is.
statement. Mm-hmm.
But sometimes people aren't ready to hear that, and so I listen and I give them the best advice that I can, but like whenever they're ready, like, oh my gosh, I will direct them to David's spiritual practice and our the sangha that you have facilitated, that created, and all of this. But like, I let people be, and like what it's done is like it's strengthened my relationships because
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't try and like grab them and like hold them into in like a
Mm-hmm.
cage. They are
Mm-hmm.
free.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. If you don't mind me asking, what about with your boyfriend? I mean, I would bet this has been popular with him that he's not being controlled in the way that he was.
Yeah. So when I first started dating him, I mean, close to probably like in the beginning of 2 years ago. It was very, I didn't, yeah, I would try and not necessarily, yeah, like I would try and control things based on like, just like, not even control him and his actions, but just control the way like he perceived me, or
Oh,
if
okay.
he, like, just try and like control the narrative almost.
Controlling the narrative, that makes a lot of sense. It's because there's sort of narrative in the relationship, and you're trying to control the narrative so you come out looking the way you want to.
Yes, I want him to think I'm X, Y, and Z, or
Right,
yeah,
right.
and it, but eventually, like I would now, like I don't try and do that. Like now, I let him be who he is. There's no consequences for him to be who he is. There's no, I don't need to control him. I don't need to be jealous or angry or upset at him. I don't need to yell at him or be mean to him. Like there's a freedom, David. Like there is just a freedom, which is
Yeah.
crazy because he's always given me that freedom. You know, he's always, but I never gave that back until recently.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, he's a lucky guy, Shana. Yeah, I think that's a rare thing in this world. To truly be able to offer unconditional love and acceptance to someone.
Unconditional love.
Let them be
That's
who they are. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like I only love you if your outfit matches today. Like it's not, it's not.
Right. I'm laughing because that's just so what we do, right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I only love you if your outfit matches. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Or if you act right in front of my parents, or if you, if you don't go out, I don't know, with whatever.
With
like,
so and so. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if yes, or if you behave properly, or if you don't, like it's so exhausting, first of all, to have to constantly worry about. And now there's just a sense of freedom. Like I have more time to do things for myself because I'm not worried about what my boyfriend's wearing. Like, I don't care.
Right. And you have more attention. I love that's such a great thing to add to that, because you have attention for yourself, and you can just look into your own self and into your heart and connect with yourself and love yourself instead of having to like work out all your stuff through him. And then you get to just enjoy each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not constantly needing him to love me. There's not this constant. Yes. Like I don't, yes. And because I love me, I understand that he loves me too. Like I get that. Oh my gosh, I understand what it's like for someone to love me because I love me.
Yeah. So good, Shana. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's an aspect of this that we don't have time to get into, and we won't today, but maybe another time. But if there are things that do need to change, there's skillful ways of doing that. Setting boundaries with consequences, giving feedback, stuff that we've talked about in other places, and like in the relationship class and that I did in different places. So there's that too. So it's not like we have to just, whatever they do is what they do, and we can't have any say in that. So there's skillful ways of dealing with that. But the thing that has to come first, I think, is the thing you're talking about right now. The first thing has to come is unconditional love and unconditional acceptance for ourselves and also for the other person, whoever they may be, no matter what they're doing. Unconditional love, no matter what they're doing. We don't have to love what they're doing, but it's necessary to love who they truly are inside themselves while they're doing whatever crazy or annoying or inconvenient thing they're doing.
And I'm so glad you said that, David, because you are right. It is not just turning a blind eye to everything they do and not caring, because there are some things in our relationship that like do need addressed. There are some things that we do need to speak about. There are boundaries that need to be set. There are conversations that need to be had, but it's doing so coming from a very loving place and from a very not from a controlling place, not from a manipulative place, not from an angry place, from like a place of love and unconditional love for this person. And you did a relationship class, and I took that class, and you taught us how to have clear, honest, assertive communication. Not assertive, clear, honest, direct.
Yeah, assertive too. I like that word too. Yeah.
Assertive, And that was the beginning of thank you, because I wouldn't. It set the bar. It started the bar for it started my whole the turning point of my relationship, because before, there wasn't clear, honest, direct. I didn't know how to be clear, honest, and direct with anyone in my life. And now I do. Yeah, but I will say one more time, David, these things come I work on them, daily, and this. It is not just like I fixed it one time and
No,
it's good forever. It
no.
is a constant work in
Yep.
progress.
Same here, Jana. Same here.
Even
And I've been doing
even
this a
this many
long
years
time.
later.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, same here. It's a work in progress, and it
Yeah.
goes on and on. And it just gets, in my experience anyway, it just gets deeper and deeper, and the
Yeah.
love gets deeper and deeper.
Mhm.
The ability to act skillfully in life gets more honed and deeper too. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it just goes, at least so far for me, it just goes on and on. And that's okay. It's a good thing, actually. I love it. I love practice. I love doing this work and clarifying things and cleaning things up and getting more clear and more skillful. It's what my life is all about. So it's not a problem.
It's fun. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Hmm.
And it leaks into everything. It leaks into your relationship with food. It leaks into your relationship with humans. It leaks into your relationship with alcohol, with drugs. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like with anything, I feel like it just
Hmm.
helps strengthen your relationship with
Hmm.
my house plants. Like I just learned how to take
House
better care of
plants.
them. Like
It's
serious.
great. Even your relationship with your house plants. That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm serious.
Well, I
But
think that might
yeah,
be our time, Shayna.
yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to say or add before we go?
No, I honestly, that I think we had a really good conversation, and I think everything was touched on. And
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for being the person that you are and the facilitator, and the amazing practice that you have. And it has been a pleasure and a joy knowing you. So thank you, Melanie.
Yeah. Thank you too, Shayna. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and thank you for your practice. I
Absolutely.
really,
Thank you,
really
David.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. And
Thanks for
so
time.
to anybody who's listening, thank you also for being here. Thank you for your time and attention to this. I hope you enjoyed the program and stay tuned. There's more to come. Take care, be well, and have a good practice day out there. I'll see you again soon.